Resonance of Fate, otherwise known as End of Eternity, is a very unique and somewhat away forgotten Jrpg. It was developed by Tri-Ace and came out in early 2010 for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. Unfortunately though, it was released around the same time as the long-awaited Final Fantasy 13, and like many other people, I missed out on Resonance of Fate because of Final Fantasy 13. I mean, Final Fantasy 13 was one of the most anticipated games for that generation, and my gaming budget back then was very limited. Although I was very lucky to have a friend who owned Resonance of Fate, and whenever I was over, I was at least able to try the game out, and I remember loving the battle system. But as time went on, I started to get distracted by other games, and slowly but surely I started forgetting about Resonance of Fate. Until late 2021, when I decided to give it a second try via the 4K/HD edition that came out in 2018. And oh boy, is Resonance of Fate a unique game. So what is Resonance of Fate about, you might ask? Well, Resonance of Fate takes place in a distant future where the earth has been polluted to the point of being hostile to human life. To combat this pollution, humans have built a tower called Bezel to protect them against this pollution. And on Bezel there are cities in which humans now reside, and there's also a system called Zenith that controls Bezel. It is also here that we get to meet all three protagonists, Vacheron, Zephyr and Liane. They're part of a hunter group that takes on odd jobs across Bezel. Now that was a very brief story synopsis, and I don't want to spoil too much of the story. Although I had a really hard time following along the story, and the pacing felt off for me. It was like watching a movie halfway through, and it took a couple of chapters before I got a decent grasp of the story. But I do have to say that the story was a lot deeper than I expected, and by deeper I mean the story felt philosophical, and if you're into that, then the story might be something for you. I'm personally not into philosophy, so it didn't do much for me. Although there are some NPCs that you can talk to in order to get a better understanding of the world of Resonance of Fate. But let's talk about gameplay, which is arguably one of the most unique aspects of the game and personally the main attraction of Resonance of Fate. As you guys can see, there are a lot of awesome looking gunslinging action, and some of you might think the battle system is fully action based, but it's not. It is more of a combination between turn-based and action-based, although it leans a little bit more towards a turn-based combat system. In Resonance of Fate you can fully control your character, and they all have an action meter that slowly depletes whenever you move or attack. The problem here is that you can't move and shoot at the same time, and you're also susceptible to being interrupted by the enemy. In comes Hero Action, and what Hero Action does is that it allows you to pick a destination for your character to run. While being in a running animation, you can also shoot, but most importantly, the enemies can't attack or interrupt you. Not only that, but you can also perform a tri-attack, where all three characters perform a hero action at the same time. Now performing these hero actions requires hero points, and it is very important to manage them correctly because you will end up in a very vulnerable state if you're out of hero points, so you shouldn't always do hero actions. Sometimes it's just better to manually move your character behind a bunker and attack from there. Although you do get hero points by killing, stunning, peeling their armor off, or knocking your enemies up. I totally understand if all of this sounds confusing and I'm just barely scratching the surface. Personally, it took a while for me before I fully understood the combat system, but it felt rewarding once I got the grasp of the battle system. There is a tutorial in the game, but that can easily be missed. For those wondering, you'll find the battle tutorial in the battle arena, which you can find next to the starting town. What is also interesting is how you traverse through the world of Bezel. The overworld is made out of a hexagonal grid system, in which you can lay down energy hexes in order to traverse the world map. Now there are towns and cities that you can enter, although there is not much for you to do or explore. You'll pretty much be in and out. You will spend most of the time in the overworld map or fighting gauntlets of enemies in a dungeon, which makes Resonance of Fate a very grindy and repetitive game. But that didn't bother me as much as I was very invested in the combat system. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Resonance of Fate is quite a complex game and there are barely any handholding, so I'm going to give out 4 tips that might help newcomers. First and foremost, do the tutorial. As I said earlier, you'll find the battle tutorial in the battle arena next to the starter town, where they will go through the basics. Number 2. Balance out your weapon levels. What do you mean by that, you might ask? Well, Resonance of Fate has quite a unique leveling system. There are 3 weapon types, handgun, SMG and grenade, and they all have their own levels. The accumulated level of these 3 weapon types are your character's overall level, which dictates your health and weight capacity, which is also important. So avoid specializing in one weapon type and instead switch around your weapons between your characters, so that you can get their overall levels up. Number 3. Make sure to do side missions and battle arena content. There are side missions for most of the chapters in the game, and side missions that have not been completed when advancing a chapter will disappear, so make sure to do them for some nice rewards. Battle Arena on the other hand is a good place to grind money, weapon levels, and there are some nice rewards that you can get. Number 4. Get familiar with weapon customization. There are a lot of custom parts that you can attach to your guns in order to increase their performance. We have scopes, barrels, adapters, magazines, just to name a few, and it can get really complex the further you get into the game, so make sure to get familiar with weapon customization in the early chapters, as there are only a handful of custom parts to play around with. But yeah, Resonance of Fate is definitely not the easiest JRPG to get into. Combining that with a confusing story in the early chapters, I can see why some might give up on Resonance of Fate. And it doesn't help that the game is grindy too. But somehow I enjoyed my time playing Resonance of Fate. I was really invested in learning this very unique JRPG and it felt really rewarding. But then again, maybe it's just my simple brain that can look past all the shortcomings for some awesome gunslinging action. If you find Resonance of Fate interesting, then do consider giving it a try. The game is over 10 years old and it definitely has a 7th gen feel to it. It might not be the best Tri-Ace game out there, but it's definitely one of the most unique JRPG I've played. But that is all I have for today. Let me know your thoughts on Resonance of Fate in the comment section. Thank you for watching this video. For the videos on RPGs and sometimes anime related stuff, consider subscribing if you're interested. More videos are coming, so stay safe and I'll hopefully see you guys next time.